All right. All right. Okay, I'm going to go slightly out of order, although I hope I'm going to be covering all of the stuff that we have in the manual. And let's start sharing. Oh, Bob, would you enable screen sharing?
Sorry. Yeah, here it comes.
Okay, share screen. All right, let's see, where can we start? There's so much here. Okay.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can. Good, I'm glad you found what was going on there. All right. I'm going to, this is applicable to HF. Some of this is even more applicable to VHF, UHF. And I'll tell you a few things. I'm going to try to keep the unnecessary information out, although we must know that others were here before us, and others will probably be here after us, using all sorts of different technology that we either have. Well, right now I may refer to some stuff that we've have already forgotten, like arc and motorized transmitters rather than radio tubes or various other things like that, or transistors. But in the meantime, for VHF, UHF, and in some cases HF, you have three ways of sending a signal or transmitting a signal from one place to another. The one we're usually interested in is called line of sight for the technician bands that we have. And that's if my antenna can see your antenna, then we can have a contact. If my antenna cannot see your antenna, then it's a little iffy. There are some ways around it. Ground wave, we're not going to find very much in the VHF, UHF band. This is where the radio waves actually follow the curvature of the Earth. And back in the time where I guess wooden ships and iron men, I'm talking about the early 1900s, 20s, 10s, 20s, and 30s, where there were radio stations like Yosami in Japan and one in Sweden that's actually used huge alternators, just like the ones in our cars, except quite a bit larger, to transmit very, very steady, stable signals using ground wave. The Yosami had a circuit, I think it went from Japan to Europe over 7,000 miles. And it was very, very easy to transmit. Anyway, that's ground wave. You're not going to see it in VHF, UHF at all, and not very much on HF. Now, skywave, you're going to see where you have the ionosphere, and we'll explain what the ionosphere is and what it does in a little bit, but it refracts, it bends some of the radio waves that they're electromagnetic waves that we send out, and it will skip. It's called, or hop. You can see it bouncing here and down here. Sometimes it'll hop more than one time, sometimes 3 or 4 hops. That way you can get 3 or 4 ways to very long distance. And I think we may have talked about this previous. If you have a powerful enough telescope, you can magnify it, and you'll see the back of your head. Actually, it works that way because if the sky wave doesn't hit in one direction, if you're aiming right at the guy, sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you can turn the antenna around and go back. It's called the long path. And sometimes that works, especially if there's some interference on this way. Okay. So signals go in a straight line between the transmitter and receiver. Line of sight is fairly consistent. As I say, if you see it, if your antenna sees the other guy's antenna, you have a contact. HF is not good for it because the antennas are much too large and there's higher noise. Okay. Now, when it says lower frequencies yield better results, back in those days, they were using very, very low frequencies. The Ionosphere station and the Swedish station operated on something like 17 kilohertz, which actually, if they were sound waves, we'd be able to hear them. That was the time that the authorities said ham radio operators can be placed in the outer limits. No one ever uses the higher frequencies, so they're useless. So we'll put them over there, much to their chagrin. All right. If there is anything that I tell you that you're not familiar with or like a little more explanation, please come in. Please get in here.
So far, so good because I've been reading on the manual.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. This guy, I guess he's a military type. Acronyms and stuff like that. Beyond line of sight communications, refracted by layers of ionized particles. Function of the state of the ionosphere. What is the ionosphere? We'll do ionization first. Ultraviolet energy from the sun detaches electrons from gases in that region of our atmosphere. Positive ion and free electrons. More sunlight, the higher the ionization. When this outside energy is removed, the ions recombine, and they sort of block the refraction of the signals. All right, this is what happens every night, or every day actually too. All right, how many of you have not listened to AM radio? Anyone? No, okay. All right, because during the day, AM radio, if you're driving around your town and you turn on your radio, you can listen to your local news or sports station. But if you get more than about 25 or 50 miles away from where the radio station is, sort of dies out. That's because this D layer forms during the day, and it blocks the signals from bouncing. At night, this D layer goes away. And you've probably heard of the truckers channels on AM radio, where you have one station in Texas or these clear channel radios stations where the D layer is removed. The radio signals now bounce off the off the ionosphere for long distance. Some of these truckers' radio stations can cover a whole third of the United States. So during the day, D layer is here. At night, it's gone. You're also going to find this working not only on the AM broadcast band, but at least two of the lower frequency amateur radio bands, the 160 meter band, that's 1.8 to 2.0 megahertz. It's going to be pretty inactive during the day. And also 3.5 to 4. That's also going to be pretty active. Once you go beyond that, there are several bands, well, going from the 5 megahertz band, which, well, we won't be using that with technicians, but from 5 megahertz all the way up, you're going to find that the signals will start reflecting farther away. Okay, it's the first layer is the E layer. Short range daytime communication at HF. I know that when I use the 5 megahertz band, I would get a range of about 500 to 1,000 miles on it. It's about the same with the 7 megahertz bands, 40 meters. And when you start getting into the 10 megahertz band, 30 meters and up, then you're going to find that the energy will actually even pierce this and go to higher bands and get reflected even farther. All right. Sporadic E we'll talk about in a little bit, because you'll find that on, especially on 10 meters and 6 meters. And that way you can, a technician can contact distant stations. Most important layer is the F1 and F2, which at night becomes just one F layer. Now, one of the problems we have here is that, I guess we're going to get, we'll get into that in just a minute, is that, well, as an average ham, you're not really going to know which layer is going to be working for you, which frequency is going to be perfect for your trying to contact, say, Cambodia at noon your time or whatever. There are programs, there are studies that are made every day by various government agencies to help predict that. Okay. Now, 3 concepts. MUF, that's maximum usable frequency. LUF, which is lowest usable frequency. Maximum usable frequency, if the radio signal has more energy on a certain band, it's going to go straight through the layer of ionosphere and off to whatever star system we're pointed at. If it's below the maximum usable frequency, it will bounce off the ionosphere, come down, and as I mentioned before, it'll go up and down several times sometimes. When the lowest usable frequency is greater than the maximum usable frequency, then you can't talk. Okay, there's a government agency that shoots up vertical radio pulses and tries to figure out where these layers are. You don't have to know the equations or anything of that sort, but these things are actually published. You can go to spaceweather.com, or you can go to, let's see if I can find whoops. Okay. 1000. Okay, you can't hear it too well right now. No. Still with 5. It's a little weak right now, but you have a radio station called WWV, which transmits on 2.5, 5, 10, 15, and 20 megahertz. Gives you the time of day. It's on a very good atomic clock. So ever since I was a young ham, I would calibrate my receiver to it and set my watch to it. It also broadcasts various figures for solar weather, sunspot numbers, and the possibility of solar flares and things of that sort that will affect us. Okay. Now the sun, let's see. Oh, let me go to someone else. I'm going to stop sharing for a second, and where am I now? Okay. And let's see if I can, where am I here? Okay. Going to try to start screen sharing again. Okay. The sun has chicken pox. And it's also has some fairly bad acne attacks and things of that sort. Chicken pox we like. Okay. Okay, as I say, WWV broadcasts solar information 18 minutes after each hour. Sun noise measurements, state of the geomagnetic field. These are things that will cause a lot of static, a lot of noise, and you possibly cannot listen to other stations because of the background noise. Let's see, what's anything else? No. One other thing that the sun does, sometimes it spouts out all sorts of energy, particles. They're called solar flares. If we're lucky, the part of the sun, the face of the sun that's facing away from us, is going to spout that stuff up. Otherwise, when it spouts it out, it's going to cause a lot of particles that are going to interfere with the ionosphere. And then we can't hear very much. There are some solar flares that have set out enough energy to interfere with our power line grid nationwide or worldwide. So there's a heck of a lot of energy out there. Okay. Skywave, okay, we did this. Okay, we talked about the regions, EF region, and maximum usable frequency and minimum usable frequency. All right, sometimes there's a little backscatter. We don't need to know too much about that for HF or for the exam. All right, I'm going to get out of this. Any questions so far? Okay, we'll try to close the current tab. All right. Okay. Back into sharing. Okay. All right, these are the sunspots. Number of sunspots correlates with solar activity, radiation. More sunspots means more ionization, better propagation for us. Sunspots have been observed, I think, since about the 1600s, if I'm correct, Bob. But nobody knew what it meant. Now we know. The more there are, the better things are. The thing is, the sunspots increase and decrease on an 11-year cycle. You can see like 2008, 2009, hardly any sunspots. There was a peak in 2012, another in 2014, and then a roller coaster all the way down till 2020, where it was absolutely miserable. We didn't have very much in the way of ionospheric propagation. Now we're in the start of another cycle. This was number 24. We're going to start number 25, and we hope it's going to start going up. Solar flex in. Oh, that's antenna that's pointed straight skyward. Solar flares, ionospheric disturbances, and storms. 8.5 minutes after a flare, we're talking about how long does it take light to get from the sun to the earth? It's about 9 minutes, isn't it? So
Yeah, I think they usually say 8 minutes, something like
Okay.
that.
Well, I guess the radiation particles are, and so some of the particles that the sun spews out are a little heavier. Okay. All right, sometimes a flare, the high energy particles reach the Earth and they block propagation for a couple of days. Other packs might remain unaffected. Thing is, I'll show you later. Well, in later class, the kind of map that we use when we're trying to figure out where our radio signals are going. We don't use the common Mercator map that we have on our walls. We use one that's centered on our location and goes around the globe. So you're going to find that instead of, if you want to talk to Japan, you're going to aim your antenna not straight west, but you're going to aim it over the North Pole to get there. Okay, geomagnetic storms. These create aurora, and it can do some interference, GPS satellites and such. But we can also use aurora to make contacts. And those are things that are done in the, especially in the high frequencies, especially on the 6 meters. I'm going to stop share and see if we can get to trying to find. Please bear with me. I'm using a new data stick. Well, I'll have to look for it a little later. I have an example of a contact that Han was making on 6 meters during aurora, and things are very strange. Let's see. Signals going into the aurora area, and sometimes we can see the aurora from our neck of the woods from Michigan. I'm sure Oregon gets it, northern Massachusetts possibly as well. And if you have an antenna that will aim into it, you can get all sorts of signals. They seem to be coming from all over, not one particular area. Okay, anyway. We'll go back to
Jerry,
yeah.
That Aurora file, you know, I've got, you gave me a copy of that. I've got that if you want me to queue it up.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
Okay, let me share then.
Okay.
Oh, I don't know if I need to share just to, well, hang on.
Well, it shows the guy's dial and stuff like that. See, so people can see the video of it.
Aurora, 5-8 Aurora, Fox, November 3-2. Call is Kilo Charlie 2, Whiskey Lima, radio, over. Yeah, QSL, nice to see you again, and beautiful signal on the Aurora, 5 and 9 Aurora, Air 59 Aurora, Fox, Norway, 25, over. QSL, Kevin, you're also 59, thank you. 73, good luck, Victor, Echo 3, Echo November, I'm gonna QSY up 5.
The clear signal you heard is the guy transmitting. And the raspy ones are what he's receiving. Okay, these are all technician frequencies there.
QRZ, Victor Echo 3, Echo November, Victor Echo 3, Echo November, QRZ. Alpha, Alpha 1, Tango, Tango. Alpha, Alpha 1,
Can you see anything there?
nice signal.
Yes.
57 Aurora, Fox, Norway, 25, Fox, November, 25, over.
You hear them.
Yes, Alpha, copy 5-8 Aurora. Victor, Fox, Shot, November 33, FS 33, over.
Okay, Jerry, you are seeing the radio screen?
Yeah, well, you can turn it off now.
Okay.
Alpha 1, Tango, Tango.
Gotcha.
3, Echo November, 73.
Okay. Okay, any questions so far?
Stop sharing.
There are people. Is that noise from you, Bob, or is that someone's question?
Hey, Jerry, do you have to worry about your radios during these really intensive flares? I mean, is there extra protection that you might have to do? You know, they always tell us in electrical storms, you unplug everything, but so these flares, do we have anything to worry about?
I suppose if you, in a perfect world, you should disconnect your antenna or something of that sort, but I don't, and so far things have worked out okay. But that's a very good question. Should I call you Doc or Mike or what?
Just don't call me late for dinner.
All right. Okay. Yeah. When we talk about safety, we'll talk about when you should ground things and what kind of protection you could have in your circuit. All right. Now I'm trying to find I had a whole packet full of JPEGs, and I'm not sure what happened to them. I don't know, one more. Oh, here they are. Okay. All right. Here's something that might affect you. I'll get back into this. There's a, okay, where's share? Okay, you can see this. All right, this is a pretty interesting thing. This is a map of a tropospheric inversion. What it means is that there's a layer of warm air on top of a layer of cold air, and that can reflect radio waves. A nice thing is, anyone in one of these zones can talk to someone else in that zone. The lighter the color, the more active it is. And this changes from day to day. I remember one fellow in Detroit saying he could talk to someone about 400 miles away in northern Michigan with his handy-talkie because of this effect. It's called tropospheric ducting. And it's pretty common on 6 meters and 2 meters. So if you go to dxinfocenter.com, you can find maps and see whether there's something going on today for you. Okay. Something else that happens on a rare basis is meteor scatter. And hams get very active during the Perseids, which that's August, I believe. And there's a huge meteor shower, I think it was in January. And with handheld antennas, they can aim their signals into the cloud, and these ionized particles that are generated by the meteors can reflect signals. They usually use computerized stuff because the meteor trail doesn't last very long, so they try to make a very, very quick contact. Okay. All right. Okay. Any questions so far? All right. I'm going to go into antennas now. Oh, wait, well, wait, two things. Hang on, let's get the, manual. All right, we'll go into line of sight type stuff. Let me share screen again. There. Now, I guess we can use sound as a simile to this. Sometimes there are echoes that are produced by sound hitting something, and sometimes the echoes can interfere with what you can hear because they interfere with the actual source of the sound. Radio waves can be reflected by changing the path, especially VHF, UHF, microwave. And you can see there's, for instance, a barrier like a building or a hill or thereabouts. Sometimes it's going to diffract, scatter, change the direction of the radio wave, maybe slow it down a little bit, and it's going to start causing problems. It's going to start causing echoes, reflections, and you're not going to get a clear signal, you're going to get distortions. Multipath. And one of the things they say if someone doesn't hear you, or you're not coming in very well, move a little bit, and possibly you'll get out of that multipath distortion. There's an okay, dead spots. I don't know if very many of you have gotten into a situation where you're listening to your FM radio and you're at a traffic stop and the signal goes way down. If you move about a foot and a half, the radio goes back up. The signal goes back up. And if you keep on moving, you'll find it's fluttering. going down and up, down and up, down and up. Let's see if I have my that's called Picket Fencing. Can you see this, or should I put another? Should I start it over again? You see
You're
this?
still on the screen with it's all text and it says the ionosphere.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'll start sharing again. Okay. So you can see that there's a signal, then there's either it's being canceled out, and the signal again canceled out. As you move, you'll hear it tough, 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 tough. Like that. That's called picket fencing. Now, one other thing that's that you're going to find, the signal that you transmit will probably be stopped by the curvature of the Earth. I know Hugh has a big problem when he's up north in his cabin. He's not in line of sight of Detroit. And there's no way that he can be in sight of Detroit except by putting I think a 1/4 mile tall tower. Is that right, Hugh?
You got that right. I think they figured it had to be 850 feet tall.
Okay, right. So what he's got to do is use IRLP or one of the voice over internet protocols to get there.
How about a weather balloon?
Hey, that's an idea. Or do what Marconi did. He used a big kite. But anyway, there is a bit of scatter as your radio signal hits the curvature of the Earth, so it goes a little farther. But in Hugh's case, it won't. But there is a bit of diffraction that way. Okay. I'll get rid of this. And now I think I can get to my friend, the dipole antenna. Okay. You remember that our electromagnetic wave is going through through space, goes through vacuum, goes through just about anything except a shielding. And it's the electromagnetic wave for any particular signal has a certain wavelength. We find that a half wave antenna, if it's tuned to the right frequency, can pick up that, almost scoop it up like a net. So here is a half wave, and this is a half wave antenna. When it's in resonance with the electromagnetic signal, it will capture it, turn it into a bunch of moving electrons, like a signal, and scoop it down into your transceiver. This is the basic antenna that most of us use. The formula for a half wave antenna, frequency is 468 divided by the frequency in megahertz. That 460, that's different from the 300 divided by the frequency in megahertz that we use for regular wavelength, because it contains a bunch of fudge factors. The wire, any insulation the wire has, the and so on and so forth. So if you use that formula to make an antenna, you'll be pretty much in the ballpark. So what we have, we stretch it up. Of course, the biggest thing is to make the antenna as high as possible. And that way it gets out as far as possible. You know, like Hughes' 870-foot tower. Now, if you transmit or receive and the antenna is not at the perfect frequency, is not the perfect length for that frequency, you're not going to get a maximum signal. You're not going to receive a maximum signal. What's going to happen is when you transmit, you're going to transmit and say 100 watts here, you're going to pump it out, and not that much of the power is going to go out into the ionosphere as a radio wave. As a matter of fact, it's going to be reflected back. And if the power reflected back is high enough, you can blow up your transmitter. The ratio, it's called a signal to SWR, standing wave ratio. And this is one of many types of gizmos that will measure it. It has a terminal here for the antenna, terminal here for the transmitter, and there's a little switch down the bottom so you can see what signal is going forward and what signal is going back. Now this thing now shows a when you transmit, you turn this little, what is this thing called? It's a moving resistor. I don't know, Monique, do you know what that is? Variable resistor, what's it called?
Potentiometer?
You got it.
All righty.
Yep. You put it on forward, adjust this to it until it hits 100. That's the index, and then you switch it to reflected, and this bottom scale will tell you what the standing wave ratio is. We find that standing wave ratio of 2 to 1 or less is acceptable. 3 to 1, your transmitter is going to start grumbling a little bit. 10 to 1, you better stop transmitting. Although most transceivers do have protective circuitry that'll keep things from blowing up. Okay, any questions on that?
Yes, so the higher the ratio, the worse it gets, basically.
Yes.
Okay.
Let me see where I am. Here. Okay, come on. Okay. This is a chart that gives you an idea of how much power is lost. If the Holy Grail is having a 1-to-1 ratio, which means that's 100%. Right here, 100% of your power goes into the antenna and is shut out as an electromagnetic wave. If you get an SWR of right around 2 to 1 here, 12 watts is being reflected out. So you've lost that much power. If you have an SWR of 4, 60 watts goes out, almost 40 comes back. So as you see, as the SWR goes up, mismatch, the loss of power is significant. Now, what happens to a lot of this? First of all, some of the reflected power will be dissipated as heat. And in a coaxial cable, that's no, just wasted power. And of course, there's a significant amount that's going to go back and mess with your transceiver circuitry. So here's one thing. Most transceivers do have some circuitry in there. It's called it's a tuner. It's called an antenna tuner. It's really not the right name for it, but I call it an antenna matcher. But its job is to make the transceiver think that it's working into a perfect antenna, even if it isn't. And I think once you get on the air, you're going to find people talking about SWRs and almost like a religion. Most transceivers will have a built-in tuner, and they only will tune if there's a mismatch of, I think, up to 3-to-1. After that, they can't handle it. You can buy a tuner from, was it, is it LG, is it? You?
LCD or something. You can get antenna tuners from a lot of different places. I got mine from MFJ.
LDG.
Okay, that's the one that makes the most popular one. But they can handle a mismatch of up to 10-to-1. And there are certain antennas that are made that depend on a good antenna matcher like that. A G5RV and so on and so forth. So it's a crutch, but you can't do anything perfectly. That's the way it is. Okay, let's see where I am now. Okay. Now, okay, share screen. Okay, as an alternative to using coaxial cable, this is called ladder line. I use this for my low frequency dipole antenna. Notice I say dipole, my dipole antenna. I have one antenna that I use for 3.5, 7, 10, 17, let's see, 15, 12 meters. For all these bands, there's a huge mismatch, a very huge mismatch. But with a ladder line like this, they even have homemade ones where people have wooden or plastic spacers, and they're much farther apart. This doesn't heat up as much at all. So it laughs at the high SWRs, and you depend on a really good antenna tuner or matcher to make things right with your transmitter. But I have been able to get lots of DX contacts using this, even though there is a big mismatch. I don't have a perfect situation, but that's how I cope. Okay, now. All right. Let's talk about different kinds of cables. Whoops. Sorry about that. Let me try it again. Okay. Can you see the cables? No? Okay, let's try it again.
They were there and then they went away.
Yep, can see them now.
There we are.
RG58, RG8X, yep.
Okay. These are the more popular types of cables that are in use nowadays. RG8U, there's RG213 and LMR 400, which are a little better. You're going to find that the cables also will be inefficient, and they'll lose power for you if you're transmitting, especially in the VHF, UHF bands. RG58U is a very small cable, and you're going to get, I don't know, is it 4 to 6 dB loss for that's giving you probably a couple of SWR points. So it's going to be dissipated. Your power is going to be dissipated by heat. Little less with RG8X. RG8U is more efficient. It costs more, but if you're going to set up a station that's going to be up in the air for 15 years, it's much to your advantage to get the RG8U or LMR 400 or some of these low loss, they're called low loss cables. If you really want to do it up brown, you're going to buy something like this, which is called Helix cable, which sometimes has a gas in it, and it is extremely low loss. Commercial stations use it. Repeater stations will use that, especially if you have a distance for the transmitter to the antenna is a couple hundred feet. This is going to have extremely low loss. But again, how much money you got in your pocket, kid?
What does that cost a foot?
Let me look. And it's also very stiff.
That's going to be expensive. LMR 400 itself is between $1. Well, when I bought it a couple of years ago, it was a bit over $1 a foot, somewhere between $1, $1.25 a foot. It might be higher now.
Much higher now.
LMX 400.
LMR 400, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I'm seeing between 1340 and 2558 a foot.
Wow.
Well, here, sold direct on eBay. Well, I don't know, eBay always says we've got it no matter whether they have it or not. Waiting for my other computer to crank a little bit. 150-foot length for $292. So it's about, that's, yeah.
Not cheap.
That's, you know, $2. That's not that bad. That's not that bad. But again, we don't have to be so lofty. Okay. Okay. Going to talk about different kinds of antennas now. Are there any questions so far? Okay. Now, what happens when you do something with your dipole? All right. All right, for instance, here's your dipole. It's fed with coaxial cable, which usually goes down the boom. And it has these elements which are not attached. I mean, they're connected to a boom, but that's all. They don't have any cables going to it or anything of that sort. But they act as a sort of magnifying glass. This is a famous design. It was developed in the late 1920s in Japan by Professor Uda. But since Professor Yagi could speak English, they used to call it the Yagi antenna. Now they're calling it the Yagi Uda antenna. Anyway, this element is a little longer than the one that gets the energy. It acts as a reflector. And these other elements, they get slightly smaller, slightly smaller, slightly smaller, and they act as a director. They act as a focusing point. So what you're doing is really beaming. That's why they call it a beam. They're beaming the energy in a single direction. I know there were some bad little kids who got a magnifying glass when they were young, and they would do horrible things to ants in the bright sun. That's pretty much what you're doing here, except here you're doing it for constructive purposes, to contact other radio stations. Any questions? Okay, let's. No, they don't have to be. They don't have to be, just dipole type figures. For instance, this is called a cubical quad antenna. This is the element that's attached to the transmitter. This is a little larger and it acts as a reflector, and it shoots the signal out this way. This is a really nice antenna. It's two elements of a cubical quad are actually equal to a 3-element Yagi beam. The only problem is, well, having lived in Chicago and in Detroit, they are susceptible to the weather. You have bamboo spreaders, and these wires are stretched around, and by golly, they distort. The bamboo breaks, and or fiberglass breaks if they use fiberglass. So it looks better than it actually is. Unless you're in a place that doesn't have very much wind, it does stay with the Yagi. Oh, wait. Um, Okay, can everyone see this? Bob? No one
Yes, I
sees it?
can. Yes, I can. Your parabolic dish. Yep.
Yeah. All right. If some of you have a telescope as a hobby, you might recognize this. A mirror which collects the light and then reflects it into call it an eyepiece. In this case, since we're using a lower frequency radio, no, light is an electromagnetic wave, but which uses lenses rather than electrical tuning. But in this case, for receiving, it's receiving a signal, reflecting it into the lead to the transceiver. It's quite a bit more gain. We'll talk about gain in a minute. And works pretty well, both transmitting and receiving. Of course, physical size, this is going to work very well if you're going into the, I guess you can do it for the 70 centimeter band, the 440 megahertz band and higher. Dish network works, where is it? I think it's 1.2 gigahertz, something like that. And they do pretty well with something like that. So now you know what this gizmo is. That's the actual receive element. And of course, as hands, this would be the transmit element. You transmit, and it would zoom back to the target that we're looking at. Now, gain. I have to talk about gain. All right. All right. Antenna gain. We have to have a way of comparing things. And I don't know if very many of you are whiskey connoisseurs. No? Okay, well, see, it seems that's
Amen, brother.
amen, brother. Okay, here's the deal. You have something called proof, which is a reflection of the percentage of actual alcohol in the drink. And they want to make the drink seem more powerful than it actually is. So a whiskey that's made with 40% alcohol and the rest is water and whatever barrel particles and things like that. It's not called 40% alcohol. It's called 80 proof. It's strong. Pound your chest and all that. Well, it's about the same thing with antennas. Back in the day, the dipole was the comparison. If an antenna, a beam antenna, would shoot its radio signal in a certain direction, say twice as much, shooting twice as much power in the direction than a dipole, then it would have a 3 dB gain over a dipole. Then the antenna manufacturers said, that's no good. We can't use a dipole. The numbers are too small. So we invented this imaginary point in space. It's called an isotropic element. And we'll use that as comparison. The isotropic element is, what is it, Bob? 1 point something dB lower than a dipole. Anyway, it's lower than a dipole, which means that any other antenna is going to be higher. So what you're doing is increase. So that's a dirty secret. I don't know when they started doing that, probably around 1990 or thereabouts. Whatever. Okay. Now, Bob has shared this trick with me. There are decibel questions in the exam. There are 3 basic decibel questions. And instead of giving you decibel theory, giving you math that you have to trouble your brain with, just give you 3 answers. Bob, what are the answers?
10, 3, and -6.
Okay. All right, so if you have a doubling of your power, that's 3. If you have a, was it quadrupling? Is it 20 watts to 200 watts? Is that it?
Yeah, I think that's yeah.
Okay, a 10 times increase. That's what increase in decibels?
Oh, that's the 10.
That's the 10.
Yeah.
And if you have a reduction, it's going to be the -6. So that's the crutch we offer you. Okay. I've been talking a lot. Any questions, or someone got a good story?
Not at this time.
What's that?
I have nothing for you right now.
Oh, okay.
Jerry, question for you. Some of this, we could relate to, like back in the day when we had antennas for TVs, and you had to dial. I remember when I was a kid, we had an antenna on top of our roof, and before we had cable, you had to dial in based on the station. Those stations, some of those stations were UHF and some were VHF. And I remember as a kid, you had to dial in because the TV had really bad, poor reception, and you had to dial it in, and it would move the antenna, make this clunk noise as it was moving the antenna to dial in, so you get a better reception.
Exactly.
So, yeah, it sounds like it's almost the same concept back to when I was in childhood, trying to dial in so I don't get a snowy picture.
Absolutely, absolutely. You're right on track there. And actually, if you find somebody, a neighbor, who has a working rotator on their antenna, and they're using cable, maybe you can ask them for the. You might have to climb on the roof and get it, but you can have yourself a rotatable antenna, right? Well, or make your own antenna, or buy a cheap beam. For instance, I have an 11 element beam antenna, Yagi antenna, that's built for 144 megahertz. I think it cost about $130 when I bought it a few years ago. And the gain is phenomenal. It's easier because if you do the formula, 468 divided by the frequency, you'll find that the elements are very short. If I have a 20-meter antenna, my antenna elements are the 30-foot long area, so I can't put too many of those on a boom, but I can put 11 on a very short boom. So you can get a lot of gain. And actually, Heather, you might have to do something like that if you're having problems in getting into repeaters. You can get a beam antenna with a rotator. We'll talk about polarization. It'll be up and down rather than horizontal, and you'll be able to hit repeaters a lot more efficiently.
I had a question about the WWV stations actually. So what do they actually broadcast? Can you just could I just punch in those frequencies right now and get their
Yeah.
stations, or what's actually on them that you're using to calibrate, just the fact that you receive them at all?
Well, that's one thing, because it's precisely on 2.5, 5, 10, 15, and 20 megahertz. So, well, you probably don't have an old radio to make sure the dial is set to those frequencies. But and you, as I say, you can set your watch to it, because that's about the most accurate timepiece you're going to find. It also, I think if you what is it now, NIST, or actually I think if you just Google WWV, you're going to find the message, the different kinds of information that it gives at what time during the day. Sometimes I'm sure that you, Heather, being in Oregon, will sometimes hear a woman's voice. And that's WWVH in Hawaii, which broadcasts on the same frequencies, but the time is a little offset, so she makes her announcement at a different time than the guy in Boulder, Colorado.
Okay, I did see that on their website. So the WWVH thing is essentially the same idea though.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Except, Boulder, Colorado is, I'm not sure. I don't think they have that much power actually for what they do. But actually, if they still have tours and all that sort of stuff, I'd go for it. And well, of course, you have nice mountains in Oregon too. So, but,
That would be
yeah, okay,
cool.
All right. Any question? Okay, let's go back to some of the work. By golly, don't have too much more show and tell right now. I can tell you a few things that we'll have to get into. All right. Okay. Okay. Share the screen. Okay, Kelly, I saw that you left for a while. Is everything okay with you?
Yeah, my connection was just unstable. Like my computer just did a restart. But I'm back.
Okay, good, good.
Yep.
Okay. All right, let's see. All right. One thing, okay. Why are direct UHF signals rarely heard from stations outside your local coverage area? That's because it's line of sight. All right, let's see what else. Right, polarization. orientation of a radio wave. You have horizontal polarization. The old TV antennas used to be horizontally polarized. Most of our high frequency antennas are also horizontal. Most of our handy-talkie UHF, VHF frequencies are vertically polarized. There is a 20%, or no, 20 decibel loss between someone trying to contact a vertically polarized antenna with a horizontally polarized one. So you're going to lose a lot. So if you're going to be talking to someone, try to hold the antenna straight up. Don't talk like that. So yeah, that's what happens. Okay, because polarization, the radio wave doesn't match that of the receiving antenna, less current is created in the antenna. Okay. Now, when a radio wave bounces off the ionosphere, it sort of goes crossways or elliptically. That way, and that way, an antenna that is either vertically polarized or horizontally polarized is going to work. So once you hit the first bounce, that's about it. One other thing that I talk about a little bit, and again, this is going to be for the lower frequency, the HF. Let's see. See, this is showing a no. There's going to be an area very close to the transmitting antenna where you're not going to be able to hear the fellow transmitting. That's called the skip area, where you're in the skip zone. I remember a friend of mine in Sterling Heights, which is about 15 miles away, put up a new antenna. And so I volunteered, okay, let's start at one band and we'll go up each band and see if we can see how well you transmit. So for 3.5 megahertz, I heard him okay. 7, I heard him okay. 14, I couldn't hear him. It wasn't because he wasn't getting out, but his signal was skipping over me. Okay. Oh, and when they talk about the band is closed, there might be a question about that. Band is closed means that it's not allowing any signals to be refracted by the ionosphere. So it's going straight out through the ionosphere into space. Actually, the 2-meter band is closed, 6-meter band is closed mostly, 440 is closed mostly, and all these others, they're closed because they usually don't reflect off the ionosphere. But you can still get line of sight. So just your point of view, to an old HF guy like me, yeah, the band is closed, it's worthless. But no, if there are 4 or 5 guys in my area who are nearby and our antennas see each other, then we can have nice contacts with each other. Okay. here's something that's, all right, people are always asking about this. These are vertical antennas, mag mounts. A vertical antenna is actually half of a dipole. You saw that the dipole was even at positive and a negative end. Well, where is the other end of this this vertical antenna? It's only a quarter wave high. Any guesses? No questions? No answers?
The cord?
Nope. The actual surface of the car roof,
That's right, the vehicle.
the vehicle itself. It's called, it's acting as a counterpoise. And if you have a vertical antenna and you have 3 elements spouting out of it, that would cause a counterpoise. What is it? Our old middle school middle school trigonometry. How many points do you need to create a plane?
Yes, 3.
Yes. No. Okay. Actually, I had to take geometry over again. Anyway.
1 is a point, 2 is a line, 3 is a plane.
Right. So that's why these are called ground plane antennas, because it uses an artificial plane to act as the ground. Now the mag mount is nice because it's clamps down on the roof. I don't know what to do if you're driving a Corvette. Figure something else out. So because it has to be metal to make a plane. You're also going to see this is a 2-band antenna. It's going to be a little more than probably around 19 inches high, and then probably around 6 or 7 inches above. You're going to find this little coil. Anyone know what that means by that coil? It has to do with resonance. I think we talked last week or the week before about resonance and how a resonance circuit can either block a radio signal from coming through or let it go through. Well, this is a resonance circuit that will block this part of the antenna from being used. So this will be resonance for the 440 band. So that's the trick they use. There should be a capacitor along with this coil at this 440 frequency. The wire itself has enough capacitance to act as the capacitor. And usually because the cord is so thin, it's going to be, if there's a big SWR, there's going to be a problem, but the cord is short, so nobody seems to worry about it. And usually you can, well, if you're going to buy something, make sure that you have something that'll handle the power. Most of the mobile transceivers now are running around 50 watts. There are some that'll go to 75 or 100. So make sure you have an antenna that can take that amount of power without melting. Okay. Gain of antenna. Isotropic. All right. Yes, when you start playing with magnifying glasses or beams, this is what happens. A regular antenna, a dipole antenna, will have a figure 8 radiation pattern. It'll go broadside equally. When you start putting those elements, reflector and directors, it will start pushing the energy in a certain direction. The more elements you have, the sharper this is, the slimmer this is, the better direction it goes. Elevation pattern. This is for HF pretty much. This is getting off the ground. You're at ground level, and a lot of your energy is going to go straight up in the air. It's not going to do you very much good unless there's a satellite going over. But the lower the elevation pattern is, the lower the range, the farther it goes before it bounces off the ionosphere. So that's why people like things like vertical antennas, which have very low elevation angles. Okay. P-lines, SWR, blah, blah, blah. Okay, ladder line. What can cause erratic changes in SWR readings? All right, this is something that they don't really tell you about. Coaxial cable is very nice stuff. It was developed after World War II. And it's caused a kind of revolution because you could put a coaxial cable through a wall without having to worry about metal or wires or anything like that. But it seems that it's made out of rubber coating. Sometimes the rubber gets nicked. Sometimes moisture gets in there, and it's going to, the moisturized cable is going to absorb a lot of power, and it's not going to put anything out. So an erratic change could be bad as a bad coaxial cable or bad connectors. Okay. Antenna systems. Okay. Dipole, I have something similar as a center insulator. Okay, here's your dipole radiation pattern, broadside. Now, okay, here's the ground plane, or here's the little elements here. This guy uses 4 elements for his ground plane. If you're on HF and the antenna is at ground level, usually calls for 40 or 50 counterpoise wires. It's a big headache, but there are some people who will actually put the counterpoises wires down, then put the sod on. Okay, rubber duckies are a compromise. This thing is a rubber duck antenna. It's actually built for 3 bands. It's built for 144, 440, and also 50 to 54. This is a huge coil that they put on top. I hardly ever use the thing on 6 meters. But anyway, this is the coil. And the coil is not as efficient. If you can get yourself an antenna that's a bit longer, it's called a 5/8 wave. And that's the one that I usually put on this this radio. And that's the one that reminds me of the movie A Christmas Story. You're gonna poke your eye out, Jerry, because it is so long. Anyway, it's supposedly 1.5 dBs more powerful than the rubber ducky. And they're cheap. So that's a good investment once you get your antenna, once you get your Baofeng or whatever. Okay. All right. Faraday shield. Your car is a Faraday shield. If your car gets struck by lightning, the shielding is going to disperse the charge of the lightning strike evenly around you and protect you. And as a Faraday shield, if you go inside your car and turn on your HT, you're going to hear very, very muffled or very low signals because it's shielding your HT from the outside. Okay. Direction. Okay. Antenna polarizations. If you remember, each band has a band plan. There are some for satellites, some for weak signals, where you use sideband or code, and those are usually horizontally polarized. You know, it might be your thing. I don't know. All right, here's a good one. How can your station be able to access a distant repeater? Buildings or obstructions are blocking the direct line of sight path. It's almost like playing billiards or pool, where you could possibly aim your antenna at an area where a part of the signal is being reflected into your desired station. Okay. Oh, and here's two. This guy is set up for sideband. This guy is set up for repeaters or FM. Again, here's the beam radiation. And here's a dish. Works on 10 gigahertz. And people do mountain topping with it. I don't know, I think I saw a 1,300 mile record that somebody made from one mountaintop to another. Okay, yeah, I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what, Heather. Next time I visit my daughter in Colorado, I'll try to get up to Mount Evans. That's 14,000 feet up. And you get up to your equivalent mountain, and let's see if we can make a contact.
All right, sounds good. I think that would be, I don't know, Mary's Peak here. That's not 14,000 feet though.
I actually brought an HT up there once, and you know, with my health, I don't know if I'd be able to make it again, but I did trigger or check my HT, and I think about 12 repeaters. in different parts of Colorado responded. It's joy of being up there. The repeaters couldn't see each other, but they could certainly see my signal. All right, feed lines. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, they're talking about solder. Anyone do any soldering?
I do a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah, they ruined a good thing. There's actually a publication that you can get online called Solder Smoke, and we went along our lives merely soldering with a lead-based solder, and now they say it's no good. It's bad, so they're saying you have to have non-lead, which has a higher melting point, and it's a little worse. Anyway, following type of solder is best for radio and electronic use. That's a rosin core solder. And I'll tell you a little story about a radio I had. It's made by Kenwood, best of its kind. It's TS 440 SAT. All of a sudden started misbehaving. And all of a sudden, a whole bunch of people started noticing it misbehaving. You got a bunch of zeros instead of the frequency readout. And you couldn't hear anything on it. What happened was a subcontractor for them made the solder holes too large. And when the components were put in, they had to use more solder to fasten it properly. After 30 years, the solder started crystallizing and not making contact anymore. I mean, there were a few other things wrong with it, but that was the primary thing. I sent it to a fellow who in Florida who specialized in things. He went over it with a fine-tooth comb and came out better than factory new. But that's what can happen if you have cold solder joint, which looks grainy. A good one looks shiny. Okay. I'll leave you to look at the pictures of the solder, of the connectors. For what we do as technicians, PL259 is pretty good. If you're really getting into very high stuff, high price stuff, you're going to use N-type connectors, which are a bit more expensive, larger. And water intrusion. I've got this stuff. Where am I? Coaxial. It's kind of a tar-based stuff. And what people usually do is they wrap some electrical tape around the connector first and smear it on. Otherwise, it's very hard to get the gunk off. I'm looking for these things. Oh, here it is. And it's just it shapes comes in a roll like this, and you just shape it to seal things off. I put it at the entrance of my house, so where the cables come in, and that keeps the varmints up. All right, losses. Okay, here. RG-174 is used a lot for those roof mount antennas. It's very thin, and you can see at around 2 meters, you have a 10.3 decibel loss. That's a pretty significant one. LMR 400, 1.5. That's a pretty good. Actually, if you're doing HF all the way up to 10 meters, I would say use a cheaper coax like RG58. So the loss isn't worth the extra price. Okay. Oh, one thing, if you're going to get an auxiliary antenna for your handy-talkie, make sure that you get one that will match your radio. So SMA is the current favorite, and there's a male and a female. So I know my Yuzu uses a male, and the Baofeng uses a female. Okay. All right. Okay. I don't know, there are antenna analyzers and things of that sort. Something like this is, something like this is very nice. It costs about $50, and you really should be an electronic technician to play with the thing. There are other things. MFD has a very nice antenna analyzer for a couple $100. Best you find somebody in your radio club who has one who can lend it to you, and you can get a pretty good picture of what your antenna is doing. As technicians, you might as well just adjust the antenna to the right length that they recommend, and leave it at that. I don't think you need anything fancy to figure that out. Okay. Any other questions?
Not necessarily a question, but a comment on the antenna connectors. I encountered that this week because I did end up getting a 15.6-inch longer antenna for my Baofeng radio, and I was really sweating the connector being the right type of connector, because it's very hard to tell when I'm, having the limited information and hoping I bought the right thing online, but it did end up working.
Yeah, the merchants will usually give you a list of the equipment that it fits.
Yeah, they gave a list of companies that the antenna was compatible with, but it was a little bit sketchy about whether my exact model would work with it. So yeah, I would just say definitely be careful with that, but it worked out for me.
Okay, and if someone's transmitting on the repeater you're trying to listen to, you might want to try switching between the original antenna and the new one they got, and see how much difference there is.
Yeah, I definitely will.
I imagine that antenna cost you less than $30.
Yeah, it was on sale for 18, but normally about 27.
Yeah, okay, good. Yeah, who'd you get it from? Amazon or?
Oh yes, just the Amazon.
Okay. comment. I usually say that anyone who advertises in QST magazine, the big ones, DX Engineering, Gigaparts, Texas Tower, ham radio outlets, all those places are trustworthy places, and they'll give you good advice. Of course, they make their money by selling you stuff, but I don't think they'd chip you. Okay, tuners. I talked a little bit about the tuners. They're just supposed to make your transceiver feel good. Automatic ones, some you can actually put at the antenna with a little battery, and they'll do all the tuning for you. Analyzer, let's see. Oh yeah, this is the one, the MFJ analyzer. These are pretty costly. In the brand new, they're in the $300 range, but they do a really good job. That little gizmo I showed you costs less than $50 and would probably run rings around it, but you really have to do a lot of work to get ready to use it. And yeah, getting about that time. Little clock on the wall. All right, final questions. Okay, I have emptied the contents of my brain. You know everything now. I know nothing. Or thereabouts. But anyway, that's where we are.
Okay, for next week, chapter 5, parts is parts.
Okay, great. So good night, everyone. Oh, Bob, are we going to have a? I don't think we need a
Office hours?
office hours. I've got something going on.
Oh, okay. All right, we'll skip it this week. We'll skip office hours this week.
Okay, and you can just email us if you have any questions. We're easy to contact.
Okay.
Call letters at arrl.net.
And it's Jerry's W9PL channel is where the recordings will be.
Yeah, there are some recordings from previous years there, if you can get something out of it. Otherwise, over the weekend, we'll try to get this thing going. And yeah, it's W9NPI, November Papa India.
Right there.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Good night.
Good night, all. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
Y'all come back here.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Right.
Good night, Bob. Good night, Jerry.
Good night, John boy.
Yeah, John
Good
boy.
night.
It's going to be 30 degrees in Florida here on Saturday, so pray for us.
My heart bleeds for you. Of course, you guys don't have as much heating as we do.
Well, yeah, we have ours is okay, but it's kind of funny to see some of these people, they walk around like Nanook of the North. They got hat, gloves, and it's like 50 degrees. It's like, come on, guys. But it's going to get in the high 20s, I think 30 on Saturday. And in fact, I seen on Facebook tonight, somebody put pray for Florida. So
well, but
we'd love to have 30-degree weather.
that'd be a heat wave.
Yeah, we've been down cold. Right now it's not bad. I think we're about 25 right now, which is much nicer than it has been.
When my kids were 6 and 4, we take them down to see the grandparents in Miami Beach. And anytime the temperature got below 80, they would tuck the kids in and cover them up with extra blankets.
It's 11 degrees and snowing in our security camera in West Branch. So no thanks. We'll take it. Not so bad. All right. See you guys next week. Thank you.
Good night, all.
Bye.
You did it again, guys. Good job.
For better or worse. Hey, take care, Hugh. I hope you're feeling better.
Me too. And Jerry, I hope you're not under the weather either, and I hope you feel better.
Oh, he's already off. He already bailed out.
It didn't look like he felt too good tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Hey, take care.
Good night.
Bye.